We will see, I guess, right? We're barreling into it. We can't miss it unless Kamala wins, in which case, ruh-roh, we'll all be in the gulags, right? Alberta's Minister of Health is concerned about C-293, and she talks about how concerning it is because the laws can be used to do pretty much anything. So it's refreshing to see people in positions of elected power and in ministerial positions clearly saying this can be abused, and it looks like it's going to be abused, and I don't want to do that. And so interesting there. UK, United Kingdom, England, to pay reparations for slavery. This is a coordinated thing because the United States is talking about paying reparations to black people for slavery, same thing. And I'm sure that Canada's got something on the docket for paying reparations to First Nations people, although maybe we already checked that box, I'm not sure. $50 billion more to Ukraine. Canada is celebrating the fact that we're stealing from Russia to send this money to Ukraine to pay for more war, which I think is an error. I think it's a mistake. And we have to start with BC, and we've got to talk about the invasion and healthcare and all sorts of things going on. Really, it's a very, very packed show today, but we have to start in BC because we're getting to the final count. And initially, the final count said that the mail-in ballots, etc., were 49,000, and now they're 66,000. So what did I tell you? Reconciliation. They needed to know the number they needed to beat. They found that out in the week. And now they're going to count the remaining ballots. Oh, thank goodness. And also, they sent the sealed election boxes home with the election workers. Breaker News is reporting that. I wish I were kidding. Holy smokeronies. There's lots to get to. Let's get to it. First, we've got to start with Bob Mackin, and he's Breaker News in BC, and good for him. And he says, Election BC allowed staff to take ballots home during advanced voting week. So that's not great. Election integrity, anybody? Oh, election integrity, some election integrity. Who needs that, right? We're in Canada and nobody ever breaks the law ever in Canada. Yay. It's just rainbows and puppies. Woo. Cosman says, wait, hold on a second. Elections BC just admitted that British Columbia election supervisors can keep sealed ballot boxes in their homes. How is this not a massive security risk? Oh, it's a security risk. So this is Bob Mackin. He runs Breaker News. This is the report from Breaker News on a screenshot. I'll just read a little bit of it. Elections BC allowed staff to take ballots home during advanced voting week. Briefly, Elections BC spokesperson said ballots and other documents were stored off-site during the advanced voting week, including at the homes of Election BC officials. Several security measures were in place to protect electoral integrity. Was there a camera on those boxes 24/7? No? Oh, wow. Then it wasn't enough. I mean, and even then, honestly, I don't think so, because there's chain of custody and there's all sorts of things. Maybe I'll read more of this. When BC's early voting polls closed at night, did you know where your ballot was? Election BC reported a record of more than 1 million people voted in advance between October 10 and 16. A member of one candidate's team showed the Breaker.News correspondence with an Elections BC local official about a case of unmarked ballots being taken home for safekeeping. The candidate asked not to be identified in print. Supervisors have the option of keeping sensitive documents and ballots either at my district office or at a safe place off the polling place overnight. For example, their home, but not left in their cars. The district returning officer wrote, the key point is keeping them off site. The email said, as soon as you have a ballot box in private custody and you're transporting it or whatever, so who's to say you didn't get into a 45-minute traffic delay, right? If you live 10 minutes from the district or wherever it is that they're keeping the ballot box or the ballot box of the ballots, and then you leave at 10 after 5, and then you don't get home until 10 after 6, let's say, and people say, well, what happened to that, 50 minutes that you were gone that you shouldn't have been gone? And then you say, oh, traffic, right? Right then and there, election interference could have happened during that period of time. Maybe it wasn't traffic. Maybe you clandestinely met somebody and dumped ballots or added ballots or whatever the heck it was. And people have kind of done this with impunity. Nobody really seemed worried they were going to get arrested. The videos of U.S. election interference are egregious. And I don't know that those kind of egregious videos exist for Canadians, but I feel like they feel protected by something. They feel like they're on the right side of history, so what they're doing is okay. Anyway, back to this. The email said that all election officials, quote, have made their solemn declarations to maintain the integrity of our voting process and routinely bring all ballots back to specific paper or polling sites prior to opening each day. An Elections BC spokesperson confirmed that storing ballots at home is an option. And quote, at the end of the day of advanced voting, cast ballots are secured in a ballot box that is sealed and signed by election officials and scrutineers, said Senior Communications Director Andrew Watson. In urban ridings, unused ballots and ballot boxes are returned to the district office for secure storage. Where this is not possible, for example, in rural ridings where it's too far for voting places or for a voting place supervisor to drive back to the district office at night, the unused ballots and sealed ballot boxes will be securely stored in the senior election official's home. This maintains chain of custody. But does it though? If you've got your sworn declaration, et cetera, great, all that, fine. But what if you're actually committing the crime even though you've got that sworn declaration, right? Because we saw people who had those declarations and they did it anyway. Watson said ballots are reconciled at each station so that officials know how many ballots have been cast by voters and remaining. Watson calls the security of all ballots, whether unused or cast, essential for electoral integrity. A $10,000 fine, year in jail, or both are maximum punishments should an election official be found guilty of breaking the oath to uphold the Election Act by tampering with ballots and other election materials. The Election BC, quote, Guide to Voting and Counting contains a section on procedures for end of day at advanced voting. It says to ensure the official records of the vote is kept secure, ballots cast will be transferred from the original ballot box to a transfer ballot box that is sealed and labeled with the voting place name, date, and tabulator identifier. The transfer ballot box will be stored offsite at the district electoral office or at the home of the voting place supervisor, the manual said. So there you go. That is part of the procedure. So maybe that won't trigger a new election, but goodness, it probably should. And maybe they should look at changing that. But do you think that this policy makes sense? Do you think it's totally above board? Nothing to see here. Everything's fine. All the electors are working towards an election that is above board and sees who the public wants in the seat, or you think there's something else going on? I don't know. Seems very, very stinky to me. Western Standard is reporting Elections BC now says 65,000 ballots yet to be counted. Cricket's Lives Matter says first they said it was 49,000, now it's 65,000. Let the cheating begin. Well, the cheating, we're halfway through. Like they reconciled. Now they know how many they needed. They changed the number. Everybody's accepted that. Now they're going to count it. So what do you think the outcome is going to be? Oh, hello, Premier EB. The Buck, you will, says the fix is in. The NDP have taken a week to figure out how to rig the numbers. This should have been a Conservative win, counted and verified by midnight last Saturday. And now people are going to be pissed. Yeah, that's pretty much what's going to happen. But it's been so long that like nobody's going, like leading up to the election, emotions are high. Everybody's saying, go out and vote, blah, 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 blah. There's signs everywhere. Everything's happening. It's very, very top of mind. If the wrong person wins, people get mad, right? But if you wait a week, all of that pressure's gone. People have moved on. Their lives have happened. Maybe their car broke down. Maybe something happened in the news they're interested in. Maybe they got into a fight with their spouse. Whatever it is, something's happened and nobody cares anymore. And more importantly, the media is not talking about it, right? The media is not putting that pressure screwed on. And so a week later, they can announce anything and people would be mad, but like only the people watching, right? Most people don't care. And that's the cold hard truth. And so who's going to be announced? Dave Eby. And when they announce, they're probably going to announce a bunch of seats have flipped. So Eby's got an even bigger majority than the eked out majority with the Greens, right? And so it's one of those things where, man, I just think like it seems very, very stinky to me, and they're doing it very purposefully, and it seems like they know what they're doing, and they, don't worry, we've done this before, right? Jeepers creepers. I like political cartoons and memes, and so here is a political cartoon from the Hamilton Spectator, Graham McKay, and he's got Justin Trudeau and his inner circle, right? That's the finance minister, and I think that's Jennifer O'Connell, and I know that's Champagne on the left, and I can't remember the guy's name on the right, but everybody else in the caucus is wearing F Trudeau t-shirts. So it's pretty good. I like that, right? And the inner circle cabinet ministers on the bottom there, they're all, they've got love, little hearts coming up, and everybody's, cozying up to the prime minister. It looks like somebody could be taking a picture, but everybody else very far away, and they don't want anything to do with them. So very interesting. Do you think that this prime minister is going to be able to hold on? maybe he seems to be able to hold on for everything else, right? So Ryan Garretson said, respect must be given to CPC MP Marilyn Glado for bringing up the rights and freedoms violations of millions of Canadians. Will we ever see anyone held to account or answer for these crimes? Unfortunately, I don't believe we will. And man, like, I wish that I thought different. I wish that I was like, man, it's just around the corner, right? We're going to see that. The cold hard truth is, like, crimes were committed, basic rights were violated of citizens by the government. They know it. Everybody knows it. And nothing is going to get done. The reason nothing is going to get done is because the Conservatives or anybody else coming into the position don't want the other people who will come in when they go to go after them legally. That's the whole reason. Tit for tat, right? So here's Glado.
It's the right to freely enter and leave Canada. That is in the Charter of Rights. During the pandemic, they trapped over 4 million people for over 2 years here in the country, even after it was medically proven that people that were vaccinated could get and transmit COVID the same as the unvaccinated. So we had 90% of people who were vaccinated who were allowed to go wherever they wanted and enter and leave. But we trapped those 10% that were not a higher risk in the country, separating them from their families and causing a lot of trauma. Then we get to the Emergency Measures Act. The Emergency Measures Act was ruled by the courts to be illegal. Now, I'm not sure why there's no consequences for that. If I got convicted of something, I could appeal, but I would have to appeal from prison. So I'm not sure why there's been no action on that.
As soon as that was ruled illegal, a confidence motion should have been introduced and that government should have fallen. Period. There's absolutely no excuse for all of what's happened. Seriously.
But they froze people's bank accounts. That's unlawful search and seizure. Every Canadian has the right to freely...
Can we not have a class action lawsuit? Although, again, I feel and fear that our system is such and so compromised.
The questions asked of the Prime Minister were about his future.
Compromised and broken, that in order to get justice, we would have to go outside of our system, have tribunals, remove the courts, remove the judges in the courts, remove the unelected bureaucrats, remove the elected officials, period, remove them all, because it's so corrupt. Like, they're creating companies and doing kickbacks to themselves, and they feel like they haven't done anything wrong. They're like, oh, people are mad about this. Yeah, people are mad about this. You've committed a crime. Like, holy smoke, right? Like, it is a big, big problem. Here's Mark Miller. And so he's talking about immigration here, but Miller pivots so hard to attack Poilievre. All of the Liberals are attacking Poilievre at this point. Karina Gould has her winter clothes on, and she's attacking Pierre Poilievre as well for being a danger to Canada and all the rest. All of the talking points, like, if you hear Mark Miller, you've heard them all. Bolsonaro is attacking Poilievre as well. And it doesn't hit, it doesn't land, because the questions they're being asked are about policy problems that they themselves created. Their bad policies are creating problems, and the questions are about those problems, and they try and pivot hard to Poilievre is bad. And people forget what the questions are about. But like, if you can hold on to what the question is about, the longer he talks, the sillier he sounds. So here is the question and the long drawn out BS answer. Here we go.
His future as Liberal leader, not so much about your policy change, which makes me wonder, is Mr. Trudeau's leadership now a distraction for your government?
I think it's a distraction to who we need to be focusing on, which is Pierre Poilievre and the current iteration of the Conservative Party, which is extremely toxic, and I think fundamentally, if elected, would be destructive to Canada. Canadians are starting to realize that he's not only an unqualified, unpleasant character, he is starting to roll out policies and points of views that we've seen him take in the past over the last 20 years of his incessant talking in the House of Commons about what he would do to this country. Canadians need to focus a little more intensely on that, and every minute spent on sort of this internal Liberal stuff is a minute that we're not spending focusing on the real threat that is Pierre Poilievre, and that's where my sights are solely focused on.
What does that have to do with the question, sir? The question was, do you think that Justin Trudeau's continued and future leadership of the Liberal Party is a distraction from the governance that you need to do to fix what's the problems that your policies have created? do you think that Trudeau will be a distraction? And he says, the real distraction is how bad Poilievre is. It's like, it's not believable. It's not believable whatsoever. Here's Doug Ford. Did you know, and this is kind of pivoting away from federal, but did you know, we're going to come back to federal when we talk about the invasion and healthcare, I guess. One of the school boards in Ontario took $45,000 to go and buy artwork in Italy. They took a trip to Italy to buy artwork. And I wish I was kidding. And if that happened when I was the premier, like if I'm the premier, we'll wave my magic wand again and make me premier. If I'm the premier, well, day one, I'm going to abolish the school boards. Period. Done. You're all fired. See you later. And don't worry, we'll sort it out by Monday. Like, you're not that important, guys. So I'd fire them all. But I can't believe that Doug Ford hasn't fired them all after these shenanigans. Like, what? Do you not have any power at all? At all? Like, I'd also liquidate all of the municipalities in Ontario that are communist. Period. That's, like day one, like right after I fire all of the school board, everybody in the school board, teachers, from the teachers, I might keep the custodians, maybe not. From the teachers all the way up to the director of education, I'd fire every single person and abolish the ministry, or not the Ministry of Education, the Board of Education, gone. And then we'd empower parents and give the schools to the parents of those kids attending those schools. That's how we fix education. Anyway, here's Doug Ford talking about school board trustees who were elected, who are stealing tax dollars and taking trips to Italy. Here we go.
Given the numerous recent scandals and investigations into school boards, is it time to, wouldn't it just be easier to get rid of the school board model altogether?
Well, they frustrate me. Folks, do you believe that the school in Brant County school board trustees, they go out there and they decide to go on a fancy trip to Italy. They spend $45,000 of taxpayers' money, but guess why they're going to Italy? And I love Italy, by the way, but guess why they're going? To buy $100,000 worth of artwork in Italy for their school. Like the cheese slipped off the cracker with these guys. Like, I just don't get it. Common sense, or the other group that decided it'd be a great idea when all the medical students love to go down, watch the Blue Jays game, stay in the Blue Jays hotel, and blow $16,000 of the taxpayers' money watching a baseball game. Unacceptable. And the stories go on and on and on. That's why I've directed our Minister of Education to start doing audits on these school boards. They're first to scream. They need more money and so on and so forth. We're pouring money into school boards. And they're out partying and, acting like a bunch of yahoos. Unacceptable. You're elected. You have to respect the taxpayers' money. Or one more. I'm on a roll here because another one. I get a call from someone up in Simcoe. Simcoe region, councillors, I guess they're called. I don't even know why we even have the region, but here nor there, they vote themselves, ready for this one, 167% increase in salary. Wouldn't that be great if we could all just increase their salary? And it's like the fox taking care of the hen house. They're all voting for their increase. They were it was a part-time job at 18 grand. Now it's 57 grand. Like, this has to stop.
57
That's
grand?
what frustrates me when you're...
$60,000 to be a trustee? Honestly, I'd do it for free. I would do it for free. And these people are insane. These people who are board trustees right now, insane. They should all be fired and probably investigated, honestly. Ryan says, remember growing up in Canada and hearing of broad daylight stabbings at parks where a mother dies? Nope. I don't remember that. I remember kidnappings in the 80s because my parents were worried about that. And we went to the mall and there was a kidnapping display, and then my mom couldn't find me because I was looking at the kidnapping display, which she found ironic. But she couldn't find me, so she was worried. Anyway, I remember it being a big deal. Also, the school had the police fingerprint all the kids. And my parents brought me to be fingerprinted because of the worries of the kidnapping. And I was I must have been 5, 6, 7, 8, probably younger than 8, because I think I was just entering grade 1 or 2. But I remember going to the school gym and being I wouldn't do that now, I don't think. And fears of human trafficking, I think, are higher now than in the 80s. But in the 80s, things like America's Most Wanted and Unsolved Mysteries, right? And I don't know when Unsolved Mysteries started in the early 80s, right? Adam, the kid who was kidnapped in the early 80s, and that's the son of the host of Unsolved Mysteries, right? No, not Unsolved Mysteries, America's Most Wanted. And so that started that whole thing. Anyway, regardless. Ottawa mother killed in daylight stabbing at Uplands Park. Suspect arrested. Police have identified the victim as 36-year-old Bricty Bear of Ottawa. So crazy town. We didn't used to have this kind of violence. And now, like, I would look at the UK's knife violence, and they sell blunted knives, like knives without a pointy tip, which is weird. But the powers that be use situations like this, and they don't say, you know what we've got to do, stop importing violent people from foreign countries. They don't say that. They say, oh, you know, we've got to crack down on violent items that can be purchased in stores, because those violent items can be used to hurt people. And those violent items didn't used to be used to hurt people. They used to be used for their intent, which was cooking or whatever it is, right? A machete, like camping. And just because we've imported a group of people who want to use them as weapons, we should not suffer for less choice in our stores and things like that. They use these things to crack down on choice in purchases, and also, like, it's a justification to crack down and remove freedoms. And people are okay with it because they frame it like, if we don't do this, more knife crime is going to happen. And like, I've watched this happen in the United Kingdom, and it's a nightmare. It's a nightmare to have to deal with that all the time, right? Jeepers creepers. Wasted tax dollars as usual. CBC Watcher highlights this. Trudeau and Legault can really pick those winning EV investments. So we've spent a lot of money on battery plants. One of those battery plants that we spent billions on is Northvolt. And unfortunately, Northvolt closes barracks. 500 employees are forced to move. And this is not in Canada, but this is in their whatever home country it is. Northvolt has announced the closure of the modular village in Ursviken. I don't think that's in Alberta. So, but I haven't looked where it is, but I think it's in their original country, right? Because Canada can't make our own batteries. We have to import batteries and battery technology from everywhere else. Sorry, that's just how it is. Here is another school board thing. True North says, following an investigation into Bedford Elementary School in Montreal, 11 teachers have been suspended for introducing Islamist religion or religious concepts. You know what's weird? There was a school email, and the school email talked about all of these upcoming important religious days for other cultures, like other important celebrations, kind of like Christmas. And I asked, like, are we in a religious school? Like, why are we leaning into all of these other religious celebrations and things like that? I just want to celebrate the Canadian holidays that are on the Canadian calendar, and like math and science and all the rest of it. We shouldn't be taking time out of our day to do Diwali celebrations, because if we do all of the world's celebrations, we won't do any schoolwork. Like, that's not realistic. That's not a realistic thing to do, right? And if there's a family who wants to take their kids out for Diwali, go ahead. But this is not the majority yet, right? And so the school board wouldn't even answer my questions about it. So, like, pretty sad state of affairs. But if teachers can be suspended for introducing Islamist religious concepts, why are all of our schools shoving all of these religious instruction for Sikh or Hindu or Buddhist or anything that's not Christian? Why are they allowed to do that, right? Like, holy smokeronis. And I mean, a lot of people who would identify as Christian or agnostic Christian, or my parents went to church, if they went to church, you know, at Christmas type deal, like kind of Christian, those people wouldn't even tolerate Christianity being taught in the schools. You know what I'm saying? Like, the Christmas activities are bells and Christmas trees and angels. Oh no, not even angels anymore, right? Santa, right? Like, that's the kind of stuff that people tolerate, right? You can't sing Silent Night in the school anymore. You can sing Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer, but you can't sing Silent Night, right? You get it? So, like, people don't like that religious stuff, but meanwhile, we're leaning into all of this other foreign religious stuff. Happy Eid, right? And it's weird because when they get called out on it, they get itchy. They get upset because you've pointed out something that they shouldn't do. And it's exactly the same thing as the residential schools are being accused of doing, like, fundamentally, right? They took kids, they instructed those kids in a new culture, and they refused to talk about their culture. And that's basically what the current schools are doing. And that's bad. We should probably sue them, but apparently we're going to lose. So let's talk about the invasion ongoing. Ravi says, every American needs to watch this. CCP control over your taxes. This happens in Canada too. We owe debts, and we pay those debts to maybe China. This guy says the debts are directly owned by Beijing. I think that there's layers and layers and layers. Like, we offshored all of our manufacturing, right? So like when he's talking about paying debts to Beijing, I'm imagining previously a lot of the companies and any kind of manufacturing that got done was done in the United States and Canada. And so a lot of it would all stay in country, right? But now a lot of the manufacturing for like Nike or any big company, and even any medium or small company really, takes place in China, and people bring it over here. And because of that, I think that there's a lot of money going out of the country, right? And to China. And this guy makes the case that China actually is using American tax dollars to build their army. I think that's probably accurate. And I think that because of like what I've just outlined, the offshoring of all manufacturing and all of that kind of stuff to China over the past 30 years, right? From 1990 on, 1985 on, all of that has led to a situation where China is massively benefiting from the wealth of the West, and they're using that wealth to build their army, and they play a 100-year game, right? Whereas the West is stuck in 4-year election cycle, China plays a 100-year game, and it's a different strategy. And well, listen, here we go.
If China owns 800 billion,
that's too fast. Sorry. Sometimes I can't tell, but this time I was like, oh, that's too fast. All right, here we go.
Of U.S. debt, which they do, then of course the United States, as the borrower, has to pay interest, which means that you and I and everybody else gets to pay taxes every year that go to Washington, where they don't fund our roads or schools or hospitals. It's money that the United States government collects and sends to Beijing to pay interest on the debt. And the Chinese use to develop the Red Army. Do you understand? All of this has to happen beneath the surface. Because if Americans understood what I just said, they would realize that beneath all the reality is the opposite. That's the reality of the economic of capitalism.
He says that's the reality of capitalism. And I think that's the reality of the offshoring of all of our manufacturing. That's the reality of mismanaging our economy. That's the reality of changing the economic system and into a debt-based system, like into a system where people are borrowing constantly. It seems like the West has been infiltrated by communists, and we're being put through a situation where our country's being emptied of all of the wealth, and as it's being emptied of all of the wealth, being prepped for like a crisis situation where they come in and say, we have to do this now because we have to bring in communism now because capitalism's failed. So like, I don't know that this is a capitalism thing. It seems like a plan. It seems like a planned demolition thing. So he's blaming capitalism. I'm just saying there's a situation where he's saying in the United States, tax dollars are going to Beijing to pay interest on the debt. And I think that there's something like that going on. I think that there's a lot of money being taken out of the West and being sent to the East. And I think that that's planned. And I think that doesn't necessarily have to do with taxes. It has to do with manufacturing. And there's other methods of achieving that goal. But fundamentally, it is to weaken the West and to strengthen the East. And I mean, for potential of winning or continuing to hold their power. Because I think at this point, it's not even about winning. It's continuing to maintain their power, the power situation that currently is, right? The paradigm that currently is, and if not, increase the power, right? And Xi and China and Russia are in a situation where they're increasing their power through financial situations. So like a war doesn't look like it used to look. It looks kind of like this, right? Financial and power plays, right? Uneven power plays. And 30 years, 40 years to get to the point that we are now, and it's not easily undone, right? You can't just say, well, we're not going to do that anymore, because there's interests that say, well, yeah, we are actually. Like, it's a lot cheaper to do it that way, right? So fighting against that, difficult. Postmillennial says Trudeau put a pause on immigration, says Canada will slash levels to 21% by 2025. And Hobbit of Hyperinflation says he raises it by 300%, then cuts 21% off the 300. more Trudeau math. And right, like that's the problem. We're being bamboozled, right? Oh, we're cut it down 21% from 2023 levels. Right, great. Can't wait. That's going to make a huge difference. We've got China news, and then that's pretty much it. Blacklock's reporter, this probably should have gone earlier in the show. Oh well. Blacklock's reporter reports Justin Trudeau improperly divulged classified information and ignored unlawful activities by foreign agents to the advantage of Liberals. Opposition counsel says on the final day of the Chinese inquiry, party before country. So they're trying to say that Poilievre is party before country. And now the Liberals are being accused of the same thing. So it's kind of funny. Michael Chong is, Brittany is explaining what's going on with Michael Chong a little bit. But he says, image over substance and party before country for far too many months. That has been how Mr. Trudeau and his Liberals have approached what should be the deadly serious matter of foreign interference. And accurate. They're going to try and hang India around Poilievre's neck. But Brittany says, for those unaware, MP Chong found out that he and his family here and abroad were under threat from foreign interference. He found out now not from the Prime Minister, but from media leaks and CSIS whistleblowers. Our Prime Minister may or may not have taken action. This is serious. Yeah, well, he didn't take action, as far as I understand it. And as far as I understand it, if he did take action, it was to protect him or to protect his assets and to protect his election winning machine, which seems to be based in China. And so, like, I'm not surprised by any of this. And there's going to be more of it. Like, going into the next election, we still don't know who the traitors are. We've known for 2 years from the CSIS leaks that there are traitors, and we don't know who they are. And we've had a whole bunch of conflicting information from the House about it, from Elizabeth May and from Justin Trudeau, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So, like, we're not going to know, and they don't want us to know, because if we know, then we're powerful. They don't want us powerful. Laurie Goldstein says, which is it? How can Trudeau's national security advisor say there were no MPs that no MPs betrayed Canada, while Justin Trudeau, with the same info, says he has a list of Conservatives and Liberals vulnerable to participating in foreign interference? Right. Conflicting information from the source. Oh, this was the one. This was the...
And he hasn't...
It doesn't look sharp. It looks dumpy. It looks big, and it looks bad. It just looks bad. From a PR perspective, this outfit distracts from what she's saying. And what she's saying is nonsense. Like Karina Gould here, she says, the Conservative leader is hiding something from Canadians. He does not deserve their trust. But she's hiding comments. Like, she's preventing people from responding to her. And then the quote posts, the most annoying, or one of the most annoying things is you can't see. Sometimes I'll go to like Cam Guthrie's responses and try and see the quote posts, and you can't see the quote posts, right? Like, for whatever reason, view quotes, okay, they'll have quote posts, but it won't have anything here. It'll just say nothing here yet, but when you look at it, it'll say 2 or 3 or something like that. Anyway, it's difficult to understand X sometimes, but I find it funny that she's saying, the Conservative leader's hiding something when she herself is preventing people from interacting with her because she doesn't want to hear what they have to say. And like, it's a super weak leadership. It's weak positioning. Karina Gould is insufferable. Absolutely insufferable, completely and utterly insufferable. Here is a star. There's some cool videos about what stars look like. So you and I have been raised on this idea that the sun and all the stars and the planets too are this like circular kind of thing. But the circular kind of thing is just a computer generation, like it's computer generated facsimile of an interpretation of these flashing lights taken in still. And so like this is a star at 90 or more than that. Here's a raw video of a star using a $57,000 20-inch Richley Chrétien R20 telescope focused by a PhD astronomer. So this is what stars look like. There's YouTube videos that go through what all the planets look like too. Maybe I'll find it. Hold on. I'll find it. Okay, so this is a star. Here's the star in motion.
I don't look at those. Back when I was in the UK, back when we got awarded time on a telescope, they actually did send us a letter saying, congratulations, you've got telescope time. This is what it cost. Go tell your university, this is how much this is worth. And sometimes I kind of wish they did, because no, I don't look at those.
Okay, so there's that one. And then here's, this is Eric Dubé. This is Venus under telescope, how it looks. And then this is Neptune. This is amateur footage with Nikon N90, I think. Mars. Vega. And then he's zooming in here. So it's interesting. The world's stranger. I show you this stuff because I think the world is stranger than we understand. And I think that, I don't necessarily think that understanding is like right there. Sometimes I feel like we're right on the cusp of it, right? And other times I feel like we're lost in the woods. So I don't know, but it's interesting to me. It's super interesting because of how we're trained to think of stars and space and things like that. And then when you see the reality of it, it's really, really different. And so anyway, that's enough out of me. Thanks for watching, everybody. Thanks for your support. Have a wonderful, wonderful day.